Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is Wednesday, June 26th, 2024, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today, because it's Wednesday, that means we're going to be talking about all the news that came out in the last 7 days that we personally think are valuable or important that we want to pass along, that we're excited about or maybe not excited about, as Jimmy and I were just looking at something before we went live and talking about it. So we'll get into that. We do have Jimmy, Andy, and Brian. I was about to say I'm Beth. No, Beth is working through some tech issues, but she might be joining us in a little bit as well. But for right now, you got me, Jimmy, and Andy. And before we jump in really quick, I want to remind everybody that about 3 weeks ago, we launched our newsletter. And I just want to bring it up at the top of the show because the newsletter is really, really growing, which is fantastic. Week over week, we're seeing a lot of new subscribers. And this Sunday will be our 4th edition. And the reason why you might be interested in it is because we really take an approach of not just rehashing what you could obviously hear on the show, but really going deeper into a lot of the topics. We know a lot of times 30, 40 minutes isn't enough. And so this just gives us an opportunity to reach, an audience that if you'd like to learn a little bit more, if you'd like to dive in deeper, if you like going down rabbit holes, the newsletter might be perfect for you. So go check that out. You can go to thedailyAIshow.com. Not only can you sign up for the newsletter there, but you can also get access to all our past episodes and all that kind of stuff. So pretty easy one-stop shop for everybody. Okay, as far as the news today, I know I've got a few things, but I thought maybe we could start because it's like a couple news stories. It's just can we take a moment here and talk about Claude and their push in the last 2-3 weeks? I figured it might not just be on my list. They've had things called projects, which have come out literally in the last day. Then they also have projects is really cool, but then they also have artifacts. And then really, I mean, it's not news in the last 7 days, but then just, Sonnet 3.5. I think that's especially interesting because I think we just saw news, yesterday, saying, I think maybe Carl was sharing it in our Slack channel saying that now GPT-5 may not come till next year. And then we saw some delays from like 4.0 vision and things like that. So really interesting time right now. Claude and Anthropic, Claude, it seems to be definitely pushing towards more of the business use case. And that's not even just me. That's something I will give credit to Rachel Woods. She said that sometime last year. She's like, I think Anthropic is taking the direction of trying to be more enterprise business level and stuff like that. And I think when you look at projects, I don't know what Rachel knew or who she was talking to, or Rachel's just that smart. But she's right.
Well, that's where the money is, and clearly going after the enterprise market is what they're chasing OpenAI, because OpenAI has in their enterprise tier 93% of Fortune 500 companies are subscribed to OpenAI Enterprise. So if Claude's going after that, it's because there's a pot of gold there that they're chasing.
Yeah, listen, and let's talk about projects because that's another step in the right direction. This was just released yesterday. Collaborate with Claude on projects. And essentially what this will allow you to do, to be honest with you, it's almost like what I wish ChatGPT Teams Workspace did. I kind of feel like this is where Teams missed because we've used Teams Workspace a lot at Scaled. I also stand them up for other companies and they're good in some instances, but it's actually the collaboration, funny enough, where I feel like it's too siloed still. And I feel like maybe Claude is correcting for this. So you can upload project knowledge. So basically your knowledge documents on the back end that anybody that's collaborating in these projects, if you put chats into there, it's almost like it's going and retrieving from those centralized documents. Now you might think to yourself, well, that just sounds like a basic RAG system. Couldn't you really stand that up anywhere? But I think there's a lot of value here because of the way Claude was developed with constitutional AI. I think there's just going to a lot of companies, a lot of people feel more comfortable using this LLM as opposed to some of the others out there. There's certainly some limitations as far as browsing and internet and things like that. But I think this project's idea is perfect. I think, that makes total sense to me. It's really, really cool. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the collaborative element is the Claude hits it where OpenAI Teams misses it. But I honestly, the simplest part of the feature that I love the most is the organization. I just love having that one more layer of being able to organize all of, in this case, projects or chats or anything like that, and being able to do that at one more level. That alone makes it a sell for me.
And what's your
what
go ahead,
degree
Andy? Yeah.
to what degree do you think? I haven't experienced projects yet, so I'm kind of asking this question for the audience and me. How does this compare to custom GPTs as they are deployed, and as you've deployed them, Brian, in enterprise? So projects have sort of a combination of custom GPTs and Teams functions.
Yeah, that's a good question. And without diving deeper into it, of course, I don't have access because this is just for a Teams and enterprise level. So it's not something I'm reading it off of the release notes from yesterday. But just looking at their screenshots here, and in fact, I'm more than happy to just share it super quick, because if we're talking about it, let's look at it. There we go. So you can kind of, well, that's artifacts. So let's go back up here to where it's talking about, it says avoid the cold start problem. You can see in the screen grab here, they have project knowledge, where they're adding what they have documents here. Examples is customer feedback, transcript, survey results. I'm not sure what NPS is, but NPS score. They're just showing examples here in a freeze frame.
Net promoter score.
What does that mean?
It's a simple way of evaluating customer satisfaction. Okay. And it is basically the question, would you recommend this product to somebody else? If you have a 90% NPS, net promoter score, that means that 90% of people would endorse your product.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I didn't know that. So then if we go down here, we can see some more examples where they've added some marketing documents. It says Claude responses, including instructing Claude to use more formal tone, to ask questions from perspective. So it's not, I don't get the impression, because it seems more collaborative to me than what you would find with a custom GPT. Now, in a custom GPT, in the Teams instance, of course, you can share that thread, that chat with other teammates. In fact, I can lock it down, if you will, by just ensuring that the only people that, number one, can see the chat or use that custom GPT have a seat inside the Teams workspace. So that's great. But that I don't suspect, without really digging into this, that that's any different. If you have a Teams or enterprise, there's probably seats involved with it with Claude. And so that's probably very similar, I would imagine. So like, to answer your question, Andy, like, how similar is it? To me, just looking at it and where it is, it feels more like RAG than maybe custom GPT. But if you're able to adjust the tone and things like that, the formal tone of the answer, then maybe this is just perhaps an internal better option for some teams than going externally and trying to create a RAG system on some other platform.
Yeah, so it clearly has more collaboration features and is aimed at team coordination and sharing of information that's collected into a central collection than custom GPTs do natively. But both custom GPTs and Claude are RAG systems, in the sense that you can put knowledge documents into each, and those are retrieved, as context for, the inference.
Now, I will say, obviously, I don't, I'd have to gain access to it somehow, and I don't. What I would be interested in is, in fact, I was just working on this project this morning for a client, and what I was doing was I was transferring. I was using ChatGPT to help me do this, but I was transferring knowledge from a PDF that was a table into ultimately markdown method in a document. Now, the reason I bring that up is because ultimately what I'm trying to do as the person developing this custom GPT for this client is to make it easier for the ChatGPT to retrieve the right information consistently. Of course, I also want it to be a great user experience on the other side. But first things first, it's got to do the job, right? And it's got to do it consistently. And so I was actually in discussion with the ChatGPT thread saying, by the way, I've already transferred this. Step one was I transferred into a simple table. And I stopped there and I said, would you prefer this? If this is a knowledge document for custom GPT, would you prefer this in markdown method, or is it okay in a table? And it came back and said, ChatGPT said, I can use it essentially. I'm paraphrasing. I can use it in a table, but markdown method is preferred because it's very easy to parse, to read through, and to pull the right information out of. So anyway, I bring that up to say what I would be interested as a user of looking at Claude and what they're doing with projects is how good is Claude? And I'm going to imagine, I'm just going to take a stab here and say that they're probably excellent at this, but how good is Claude at retrieving the right information combined with that LLM experience, that natural user language experience for the end user, while pulling in the right information for these documents? And if it's conversational, if it has a nice tone to it, apparently you can adjust that, and it works well in collaboration with a team so that, Andy, you can ask it maybe a little more analytically. Maybe I'm going to ask it more conversationally, and it doesn't skip a beat. I'm guessing, I don't know. That to me is, I would not be shocked with everything we've seen Claude do and how good it is at conversation and how good it is at writing creatively. I could see this as being a very, 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 very important tool for companies. So, like you said,
collaboration is a part of it's a main thrust of another piece of news here that comes from OpenAI, which is their acquisition of a company called Multi. And what Multi is an enterprise-focused, video-first collaboration platform. So now look at what Claude's doing with projects, and is focused on collaboration. And OpenAI is investing in this team that's built features like the ability to collaborate across screens for up to 10 people at the same time. And it's focused on coding, right? So customizable shortcuts and automatic deep links for code, designs, and documents. This was just announced yesterday. So now I'm getting a picture that's emerging here out of the fog that they're really going after collaboration, which heretofore has not been a feature of these AI conversations. Mostly it's been me as an individual contributor using coding facilities like Copilots or Code Interpreter, and I'm working, and it's accelerating my own coding abilities. But now imagine being able, with projects and or with this multi-platform that OpenAI has just acquired, to have teams of developers within the company be able to develop collaboratively on projects that they are developing. And now I'm going to blow your mind, I hope. What they're really working on is ultimately multiple AI agents collaborating on simple objectives that you give it, and developing through multiple agents that have different focuses, including, okay, here's one who's drafting the basic sequence of the code steps. Here's one that's doing the Python, integrations across different platform, different stack members of the platform, and so on. And now when you add AI to the equation, rather than just making it a human collaboration platform like projects and or Multi are, now you see where we're going.
Yeah. Listen, you made me think of Rachel Wood. Speaking of her again, she had a LinkedIn post yesterday. Maybe, I think I responded to it, and it was talking about collaboration and AI agents. So what you're just talking about, Andy. And my comment to that was like, look, if you're good with coworkers, if you can have conversations with coworkers, I feel like there's a good chance of you doing collaboration with agents, and agents might also be collaborating with agents in the future, right? But there's still human in the loop. So at some point, there's people having conversations with agents, and there might be some multiple steps in there. And you made me think of it, because what I also said is, I also think there will be a downtick of how many a-holes, coworkers that people have to deal with, who are just that, because they're smart and people have to deal with them. And I think there's going to be an adjustment phase here where that's not going to fly much longer, because if AI and AI agents are part of the equation, of course, people's tolerance for dealing with that coworker who is a problem, but people go, but they're the smartest person in the room, and so we have to deal with it. I think they're going to get checked real quick. And so anyway, I just happened to talk about that yesterday, so you made me think about that as well. But I love this idea of collaboration.
Yeah, so the multi acquisition by OpenAI, they're acquiring a video collaboration platform. But now, why video is important is because the AI agents are going to be multimodal with clear vision capabilities. They can actually work through video. They can be interpreting video live streams that are being generated by other agents. So you
Yeah.
can see that the collaboration gets beyond just transmitting code and text back and forth, and instead is able to present images and other representations. In fact, you don't have to send text for code anymore. You just put it up on the screen in this multi-user collaboration platform that was just acquired by OpenAI.
I got two follow-ups to that really quick. Number one, is this the first company that we're aware of that OpenAI has acquired? I
I
felt like
don't
it
think
was,
so.
but I could be wrong.
No,
Well,
didn't they just acquire a data company as well? Andy, I thought you were talking
Recently,
about that.
right? Like just
Yeah.
that almost at the same time it was announced. Do we know
Yeah.
of any other companies? When I read that about what's the name of the company again? The one that starts with M?
multi.
Multi. Well, you think I can remember that? Multi, not the hardest name. But Multi, when I read it, I thought, do we know of any other public acquisitions from OpenAI? I mean, this is so common with like a Facebook or Meta and Google. We see this all the time. Meta for sure, you know, with Instagram and things like that, they acquire. But I hadn't seen it necessarily with OpenAI, or at least I thought I hadn't. So that was my first question. And then my second response to just the collaboration real quick, Andy, is this ties into other sort of news pieces that we could talk about real quickly is Carl in our Slack channel. So not something that's necessarily in the news. He just brought it up, and it was from Mustafa Suleiman, who's over the AI department at Microsoft, correct? And so he was saying like the next frontier here is context window. And I think that ties in directly. We kind of know this already, and it ties in directly what you were just saying, Andy, about this collaboration. Because collaboration ultimately cannot happen if the context window is not large enough or robust enough to allow for longer chain conversations. You know, if it's going to continue to forget what you and I talked about collaboratively on a project from 2 days ago, that's not super helpful to workers in the normal everyday. You know, we don't expect that. If every time you turn to your coworker and they say, "What was that again?" Like, well, we've all worked with coworkers like that, but hopefully, you know, like the whole idea of like, we just talked about this 2 days ago and we went through this whole plan together, and they're like, "Did we? I didn't take any notes on it." That would be super frustrating. So I agree with what Mustafa Suleiman is saying, what you're saying as far as this collaboration, but I do think it kind of goes to this idea of context window. And the other news that I wanted to bring up is sort of news. It was about a week ago. I might be a little over that. But Ethan Malik, when he released his and his wife as well, released the paper about, it's called AI Agents in Education. And their name of their project that they're doing, give me 1 second because I'll see the name of it here in a sec. Oh, please be on here. Pitch Quest. Same idea that, you know, not as evolved as what you're talking about, agent or Andy, about agents, because it's not baked in. But the idea here is that they've released the prompts, and this idea of Pitch Quest is to help students get better at pitching new ideas to investors. And they talk about in the paper about the idea of having different agents. So there's the initial reaction agent. I'm messing up all these names. He names them all in the paper, not him, everybody that wrote the paper. Talks about the investor agent, the evaluator agent, the progress agent, the insights agent, or class insights agent. And so when you look at his structure of how they built out this Pitch Quest, or their idea for it, it's kind of what you're saying, Andy. It's kind of what we've talked about off camera too, is like this idea of going out and grabbing those specific experts, be it the mentor agent, to come in and evaluate at that point. And they also talk about using video. So it's kind of like what you were talking about as well. So two other cool sort of things in the ether out there.
Well, I have some news about agents, but I want to go over to Junmi. And Junmi, let's hear what you have picked out of the news this week.
Well, I've got two groupings, two themes. One is AI in media, and the other is AI in science. Both, personal favorites of mine. But I wanted to highlight, and I'm sure this has been in the news cycle for a lot of people, is Toys R Us released their commercial that was completely done in Sora. And this is a national
I haven't seen
rollout
that.
of this commercial. It's a little like bio piece about the founder of Toys R Us, getting Toys R Us back into the out into the ether for everyone to talk about. Yeah, and the whole thing was done in Sora.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's excuse
I
me.
wanna see that.
It's a definitely interesting step for any large company to take. And it's definitely a method. I'm sure they chose it because it's going to be controversial. People are going to be like, "Oh man, now we're seeing it in the the commercial space, things like that. What does that mean for future commercials and things like that, future advertising?" They did do it in a nostalgic kind of slightly Norman Rockwell way, so they avoid the uncanny valley
Not
by
trying.
making in that style. Yeah, sidetrack that issue without trying to make it hyper realistic or anything like that. It's supposed to be a memory approach to it, and so I watched it. It looks cool, but I'm more interested in what the reaction and possible fallout that might come from it, or maybe it's accepted. Maybe because it's told in that way, in that kind of art style, that's going to be more accepted. And I want to see what how it plays out in the market. Is this going to be something that only creatives or people that are in that world are going to be concerned with about that, or are our or is customers going to accept it whole cloth? We like it, let's run with it. And I think this will be an interesting gauge of how we'll see this technology released in to the masses, so to speak.
So
that was the first one. That
quick,
one I
before you go any
really
further in that,
enjoyed. Like it gets the gears going, right? So it's like, oh man, what's going on? Early responses I've seen so far is mostly, here it is. It's coming, folks. Here's the tidal wave of AI generated video. So we'll see if it's a harbinger or not.
I have a quick follow up on that, Jimmy, real quick,
Yeah.
which was to say, like when you said the founder of Toys R Us, my first question was like, "Ooh, is it Jeffrey the Giraffe or is it like the actual founder?" Like,
no, they're
I'm
both
looking
in
at it
there
right now on my other screen. It's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, they're both in there. The original founder came up with Jeffrey Giraffe, and all that imagery and icons and things like that are all incorporated in. So it sounds pretty cool. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. In a related note, 11 Labs is launching their iOS app and is coming for the books, for the Audible and the audiobooks. Apparently, the app will just take whatever you're reading and apply their pre-generated AI voice to it. So every article is an audiobook. Everything becomes a podcast. Everything, all books become audiobooks. So I thought that was an interesting play. 11 Labs not.
You mean it could take a Kindle book and read it? But Kindle has a reading function already, but it's more applicable to. I've got an article here that I've pulled up, and
I think
a book for that, but it's going to read it to me.
Right. So I think your the primary use will be articles. You'll have your RSS feed. Everything will be, you'll collect whatever articles you're doing, newsletters, anything like that, and it'll just read that off to you.
It can accept an EPUB file, though. Hi, everybody. And that's a book format. That's not an article format.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see play out as well. I don't know if they're gonna take a lot of backlash for that, but they are also the ones who launched their own AI voice store for people to lend their voices to be cloned and things like that. So we'll see how accepted that is.
Real quick
And
before you go to
so-
the next one, because
Mhm.
I kind of feel like, though, you're saying like this is ElevenLabs, but Google already came out with what it sounds like you're saying. It's in their Google Labs. You guys know about Illuminate? Have you seen that? Because
No.
that's
I haven't used Illuminate at all.
so. Just as an example here, this is, it sounds like what you just said, but correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. I was just pulling it up while you were still
Mhm.
talking about this, but it sounds very similar to this, which is that here, well,
Let's unpack a paper titled "Attention is All You Need."
can you, by the way, can you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the core idea here?
Well, the big idea in this paper is that we can build a really effective sequence transduction model without using recurrence or convolutions, the usual suspects, right? And instead just rely on attention mechanisms. The paper shows that
Okay, I'll stop it there.
So-
So what it is this is a PDF, a highly like technical PDF, and Google Illuminate turned it into a conversation between a man and a woman
Mhm.
with an LLM, which is
Yeah.
cool as hell, by the way. It's super
Yeah,
easy way to learn.
That takes it to another level, and I think that was part of the OpenAI demo. Was they had a translation to a conversation between two different voices. That's a little easier to follow, I think, than just one person lecturing.
Yeah. It is. So anyway,
Right.
it sounded similar.
And the next, but I have not explored Illuminate either, but the next part of that would be able to, like, can I join the conversation? Wait.
Mhm.
We're having
exactly.
an AI
Yeah,
conversation,
totally.
right? Like, no, go
Another
back.
$1 million idea right here on the Daily AI Show.
Well, I mean, once you've got once the voice capability of the frontier models or ChatGPT actually get released, which they announced a delay specifically about the voice feature. They need another month, but once you have that ability, you can turn all of these kinds of papers and documents into conversational pieces, right? You can have it read it to you, and then you can just say, hey, can you reread that piece? Or can you help me understand what this is? And so that elevates, once you have that interaction ability, to be able to ask questions, giving you answers, ask follow-up questions. Yes, I totally agree. That's going to make learning and self-learning much, much easier.
Yeah, and now you can designate the voices that you want to have having the conversation about the content. So now I want 4 of my agents. I want you to discuss this and kind of work towards what the final summary is. And I'm going to interject, so I'm a part of it as well. But I have all these personalities. One is a critic, one's a collaborator, all that sort of thing. And that sounds very interesting to me. When you multiplex this to beyond just 2 people talking about it as an explanation to a whole meeting of the minds here.
I think I want some really dry pieces of information I have to learn, and I want to be able to select it to be read as Daffy Duck and Porky Pig.
Yes.
So I can get through it. I could be like, that's hilarious.
Ryan, there's an AI for that.
I'm sure there is. Character or some AI.
But will you be able to pass the credential exam after, or will you need to be like, yeah, I can't do the
Kind of replicate the voices to be able to say the answers? That'd be hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go on to. You have one more to go, don't you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I do. I do want to wrap up the theme really with another pivotal or possible precedence case. Is the RIAA and music labels have sued Suno and Udium. So this has the potential to either set the precedence of one way or another, right? Either AI companies, in particular in this case, are really going to be brought out into the open for training data practices and things like that, or on the other side, the courts could help determine that we aren't copyright infringement because we're not trying to reproduce your audio. We're simply providing, the experience to be able to make new things. So I think that's where the crux of the argument is. And however this plays out, these are big enough players to where we'll see the ripple effects on how AI and media and training data is handled, and future cases and things like that. So that was the last one I really wanted to highlight.
I read about
we got
that one, that the argument from the owners of the intellectual property is pretty strong, given that they were able to use those platforms to almost perfectly replicate very, very famous songs,
Yep.
in the style and with the lyrics and everything else. So it means that there is a capability built into now these generators that goes beyond just generalization, and in fact has a lot of specific information from those recordings.
See, here's the only pushback I have for that in that space is you can do that with tools now. It isn't their tool that's enabling that ability to happen, right? You can sample, you can create digital representations, you can make music sound like X, Y, or Z. So are you going to blame the hammers and nails and screwdrivers that allow you to do that, right? Or are
Very
you
interesting?
Yeah. So I think the case here might be more on the training data side.
Right. That's what I would
took it without letting us know. I think that's where their case might be, but the whole ability to accomplish that already exists.
No, I think you used our catalog without our expressed consent. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I think that's if anything. Yeah.
And the copyright law about use of music is not the same as the copyright laws about use of text, right? Published text. They're significantly different in that if you could do this with the published New York Times does not mean that you could do this. And we don't know, that case is still happening, but it does not mean that you could do this with published music.
Good. So we were talking before about collaboration among multiple agents. And right now, the strongest agents are humans, because they have reasoning and they have action capabilities and they have access. And we're moving in the direction where AI can take one of those roles or many of those roles that humans currently occupy. So in the investment community, a major venture round was just done, $97 million to fund a company called Emergence. And Emergence is developing critical infrastructure to enable every developer at any enterprise to build multiple agents. Building agents is really the focus of that. And right now, those agents might only be able to do simple things like filling out forms or searching for products or navigating, various services out on the web and so on. But it can, you can imagine now this collaboration platform for developers to build agents that then can collaborate. So collaboration and agency are really going to be important terms here as we move forward. Now I've got one that's kind of weird to me, and it was $43 million invested in a company called TechWolf. Now let me explain what this platform does. It infers employee skills from digital interactions that it's surveilling, eliminating the need for manual skill assessments like, oh, I want to know how this coder works or this, customer service agent works. The platform integrates with the systems that the employees are working in and offers high quality skill profiles and skill gap data. So it's an evaluative platform to determine what the capabilities and skill sets are of humans in the operation. But also you can imagine that the same kind of technology could be applied to do evaluations of AIs that are working in a multi-agent context inside enterprises or elsewhere. So that's an interesting one. I had never heard of anything like this before, where automatic evaluation of human performance was happening, but I'm sure it must exist in the coding world. At least there's tracking and evaluation of whether you're working or not. And if you add to that some evaluation of the code output that you're generating, I suppose that's in this area.
So I think that's a good point to just bring up this, and it's not directly on coding, by the way, but Jen had made this comment a while back, and I wanted to make sure I brought it up because it goes to this idea of like knowledge, right? Like how much knowledge is there about my experience and my, like how would you do that, right, Andy? Like how would you evaluate somebody if there wasn't enough back in knowledge of that, have their abilities and stuff like that? So Jen says, Brian, I think I'm more comfortable with GPTs having a short-term memory for the current situation rather than a super long-term memory right now, but I'm willing to change my mind. And then she followed and said, I'm still a little nervous about the privacy aspect of long-term memory and data use of AI. Then again, I suppose Zuckerberg's algos have had me for a long time. Maybe AI is just more upfront. Yeah, I mean, Jen, I think it's a good point. And this is something everybody is going to have to wrestle with. When cloud infrastructure was really coming online and people were going from having on-prem databases and moving into the cloud, every company had to decide, what are we comfortable with? Do we trust the cloud? Would we put our private, sensitive data on the cloud? Is it secure there? Or would we rather just keep it locked in a closet on-prem on our databases here where we feel more comfortable and it's protected against a breach? And so not the same, but similar, I think, is the way I think about like this idea that each person is going to have to continue to decide what's most valuable to them. Do they want their privacy locked down? Do they want to not share anything they've worked on in the past, whether it's something like Microsoft's Replay or other upcoming AI features? And there's going to be a trade-off to that, no different than whether you want to walk around with an iPhone or a flip phone. There's a trade-off to that. How much convenience do you want in your life? How much availability to new tech do you want to have? And everybody will fall somewhere on that spectrum. There'll be the people who are a little bit more bullish on it and say, hey, it's probably out there anyway. And if this makes my life better, if it makes my job better, if it gives me more time with my family or whatever, if it somehow in the future makes me have to work 32 hours instead of 40 and I get the same amount of quality of work done, am I willing to give that trade-off because now it knows the last 3 weeks worth of work that I did as an employee? And by the way, so does my employer. Am I okay with that? And I don't have the answer, obviously, but Jen, your comment I think is super valid, which is like, hey, where do you currently feel comfortable? Where do you think it's going? And everybody's going to have to decide where they land on that spectrum. And I suppose people will move too. Not every person who stayed on a flip phone stayed there. The some have come around and said, no, I trust maybe an iPhone or whatever the case may be, or an Android or whatever. So it's an interesting
if I think about this question in the context of education, it's sort of that there, it seems to fit nicely. I think there's a need for assessment of comprehension that can be done automatically by an AI that's kind of just observing the conversations that a student is having with the AIs that they're interacting with as intelligent tutors. That's a clear way to accomplish that kind of thing. And of course, it translates then immediately into feedback to the student. Oh, I think you misunderstood this concept based on the way you discussed it with this agent, for example. So I see benign uses for it, but I got a little nervous looking at the employee application of TechWolf. I want to circle all the way back to the beginning and the discussion about Claude, because I don't think we emphasized that Claude Sonnet 3.5 has topped most LLM benchmarks at 20% of the cost of Claude 3 Opus, right? So the top model, the frontier model from Claude, is now being superseded by its middle range one, Sonnet, in the 3.5 version. And by the way, this is comparable to when Gemini Pro 1.5 came out and was really more competent and less expensive in many ways than was the advanced model. So that's an interesting trend that, there are ways to tune and prepare these smaller and less expensive models in a way that they'll actually achieve superior performance on the benchmarks and leaderboards.
And it kind of goes
Andy,
back to
I think you meant 1.5 Flash. Gemini 1.5 Flash is the cheaper model. Pro is the more expensive.
Yeah, but I think 1.5 Pro is the one that's stronger than Opus. Not Opus.
Oh,
yeah, it's stronger than
not
Opus.
cheaper than it's got it.
stronger than Advanced, right? That Gemini Advanced, which is the most expensive model and the most, it costs the most to develop.
And all I was going to say is this goes back to what we were just seeing with situational awareness with Leopold Aschenberger, where he basically broke it down to 3 sections: compute, algorithm efficiencies, and what he called unhobbling. And I think this is a clear example, Andy, of algorithm efficiencies and unhobbling. Probably parts of that, maybe more in the first than the latter, but it's definitely probably not just throwing more compute at it in this particular case. Yet we're seeing this model. By the way, they just put out Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus not that long ago. And so the fact that they took their free model in the middle, Sonnet, made it better, and then it outperformed their more expensive Opus model. Now they have said Haiku and Opus will also get the 3.5 treatment later this year. So we can even expect by the fall to see Opus probably easily, if a GPT-5 does not come out or Gemini doesn't come out with something a little bit more advanced, I fully expect whatever the 3.5 Opus to come out this fall to be the top model. I would have a hard time believing some other one would do it if Sonnet is already there, because we know Opus is a more capable model.
And again, to the laurels of GPT, the laurels of Claude Sonnet 3.5, it exceeds the performance of GPT-4o, which was an amazing advancement over GPT-4 Turbo. So we're really racing along here.
Yep.
So this isn't a huge surprise. The artifacts is new, but it isn't a huge surprise to regular users of Claude Sonnet. Claude Sonnet has been outperforming Opus in few-shot prompting. Like you can give Claude Sonnet, you could give Claude Sonnet 3, like, hey, I'd like you to be helpful for me in this context. Like, boom, that's it. And then set the user gives this message, the assistant, you're role-playing Claude Sonnet's response. You do that 3 times, it's so much better than any level of prompting. And it's better.
The examples you're referring to, by providing examples of the kind of output responses that Claude Sonnet can provide back to you, then it understands clearly and it really performs well.
And if you do that same experiment with Opus, Opus performs worse. So like there's a distinction, and like some of the stuff that Claude Sonnet has been trained, but it's been like maybe slightly better than Opus for a little while. I have a couple stories. I will run through them just quick. One is that the Khan Academy has released free AI teaching assistant to all educators in the US. So it's the Khanmigo for Teachers program. So if you're a teacher listening to this, if you know a teacher, does everybody know a teacher maybe in the US? There are a lot. Let them know about this. The initiative is about leveraging education technology for the greater good and helping educators utilize AI to support learning. And that goes back to what Andy was talking about having everybody have access to a personalized tutor potentially to supplement the education that they're receiving in the main situation. We talked about this earlier, but it should be in the news show too. Pillbot, Andy and I talked about that. The tiny swallowable robot has entered clinical trials and is preparing for FDA review and commercial launch. This is the tiny robot equivalent of endoscopy. So you swallow a pill robot instead of a scope that's still attached to what's coming out of your mouth. Which is a visceral experience, I think, for everyone who has had it. The third thing is to go back to what Andy was talking about agents. So Shopify kicked off their 2024 summit. This information comes from a Shopify person, Lulu Cheng Maservi, posted on X. The Shopify CEO did a typical CEO kickoff speech for the first half of his speech. And then he said he built a team of AI employees to do it for him. And the agents were each tasked with specialized skills, specified roles, working both individually and in collaboration. And they went through iterations, created the slides, created the messaging, critiqued each other on the messaging. And the rest of his speech was detailing that process that he had gone through. So what we're talking about in terms of agents being able, having a team of agents like behind you doing these things is right around the corner for the general public, and absolutely there for people who have technical skills. Those are my three news stories.
Very cool.
Well, the only one I have, and I'll just throw it up on the screen super quick, is that now Google Gmail now has the Gemini sidebar on it. So I tested it out really quick. I think I've had it actually for a little bit, but now I think it's generally available. And so I said, can you summarize the main points for my emails in the forums tab over the last 24 hours? So just if you're looking at my screen, forums are all the, you can see them, all the newsletters, the AI newsletters that I subscribe to and often do not get into. But it actually did a really great job and gave me the sources for it and did a nice little summary. And I love that it actually did stick to the last 24 hours. I thought I might trip it up there, and it in fact didn't. So I thought that was like super cool. So if you haven't been using that or you use Gmail, you might want to try the Gemini sidebar for it, because it's good about bringing up your outstanding, if you have shipments and things like that. It does a really good job of that. One of my flights, all those kind of things, it will go look through your email and try to bring you back some cool insights to it. So just wanted to bring that up because that came out in the last kind of deal. Thank you to everybody, Jen and Justin and Cisco, and I may be missing somebody in here. Man, we've had a lot of comments today. Our comment section on YouTube is exploding. So if you want to be part of the live conversation, if you like what we're talking about, but you want to be part of it, as you see, we do sometimes we'll pull the comments right up into the show and discuss them live. Then all you have to do is go, come hang out with us on YouTube or LinkedIn. We're on live on both platforms, so whatever one works best for you. And we actually see the comments here in a program we use called StreamYard, which makes it very, very easy. The only difference is there's about a 20-second delay. So from the time we're saying it to the time you hear, it's usually about 20 seconds. If you're ever wondering why it takes us a little bit to get back to you, but come hang out with us. As you can see, Cisco and Justin and Jen, we're having a good time. Lots of amazing comments. Go check them out anyway, even if you're listening to this on replay. Just really, really awesome insights. So thank you to everybody for doing that. Okay, we're out of time. We're going to wrap it up. So come back and hang out with us again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about model orchestration. So really, what does it take? What are some of the newer software programs, things like Vellum, that are being used for AI app development? And Andy is once again going to be our expert in kind in as far as helping us out understand a lot of that. But we'll talk about all of that tomorrow, and then we'll be back on Friday as well. So we'll wrap it up there. But thank you for all the great conversations. This has been a fun show, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Aloha.